Hi, I'm Sarah D,
Dr. D.
and we are going to have an economic conversation that is thinking like a theorist. We have one of our viewers who asked a question. Ildiko, thank you for asking a question. She says, sorry, that was what I said to her. She says, perhaps Dr. D could discuss the dollar and where it might be heading. I would love to hear his opinion on gold and silver too. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Right?
Yes, that's a great idea.
Actually, I'm going to listen, and he's going to.
I actually think that gold and silver makes better jewelry than dollars do. That's my opinion. The dollar is pretty ugly.
Yeah, we've talked about
But
that before.
I don't think that's what she's talking about.
No, probably not.
Deeply embedded in that question is a weird concept of a reserve currency.
A reserve currency, okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about. Every country has a money of its own, mostly. Mm-hmm. Right? So my country has pink money.
Ooh, of course it does. You like pink.
It goes well with my green shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And your country
It's
has
yellow.
yellow money.
Yellow.
Yellow money. And none of this matters when you're talking about inside the same country.
None of it matters whether it's yellow or pink?
No. Because inside my country, all the money is pink. And so if I never deal with any other country ever at all, that is, I don't export and I don't import, as long as I'm completely self-sufficient and closed off from the rest of the universe, then we don't have to worry about where the dollar is going or what's happening or any of that kind of stuff. Because it only matters when I compare it to another currency, and the only time I compare it to another currency is if I'm going to exchange with another country that has another currency.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's no point, right? This thing here, this money is just used to facilitate exchange, and if I'm only talking about my country, inside my own country, and this is the only one there is.
So where's the dollar heading? What is that? It sounds to me like she's concerned about that it's going to go away because of Bitcoin.
Well, so there's right. So now we're talking about we'll talk about Bitcoin, but first we're going to talk about it in a more general sense, because Bitcoin technically isn't a money, and virtually nobody uses it as one. Well, the people who use it as one are mostly engaged in nefarious activities like sex trade, illegal weapons running, slavery, narcotics, right?
Okay, and there's one going down now, kind of because of that. And one.
Well, FTX is a cryptocurrency bank, and Binance is having issues right now. We'll see how that plays out. It is also a cryptocurrency bank, but they're not currencies, they're crypto things. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about what they are and are not, because it just makes people all agitated. Okay. So right now we're going to just talk about monies that countries have.
Okay.
Right? And so in my country, I make panda bears.
It's cute.
Right? It's the only thing we need in our country. And in your country, guess what you make?
They're tigers?
Tigers. You make tigers. Wow. You make tigers. I make panda bears. Now, if it turns out that some of the people in my country want tigers,
too bad, so sad.
Too bad, so sad. Yeah, because we don't make them.
Because to buy this, you have to have this.
Exactly.
And to buy that, you have to have pink.
Right. So in your country, in Sarah D's country, they make panda bears. And in the factory, they make panda bears and they sell panda bears and they pay their workers with Sarah D money. Mm-hmm. And they buy the parts with Sarah D money. And they buy stuffed tigers with Sarah D money. That's all going on inside of Sarah D. And inside of Dr. D's country, the exact same thing is happening, right? I pay my workers with Dr. D money. And I buy the things that make the panda bear with Dr. D money. And the people that buy the panda bears buy them with Dr. D money. And so that's all, all this is stuff that flows around in one circle as goods and services flow around in the opposite direction. All it is trade. And currency makes it easy for trade. That's its purpose. That's what it does. That's its main reason for existing. It makes trading, and inside a country, it's not a problem. But now, if I have people in my country that want tigers, they can go to Sarah D and say, hey, I'll give you some pink things for that tiger.
Nope.
Why would Sarah D want pink things for a tiger?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I can't buy.
Can't use them. Right? They're useless. They only spend in my country. Now, if they want pandas, we could just trade pandas right across.
We could.
Right? And now inside the country, people could buy, inside Dr. D's country, we could buy tigers with Dr. D money.
So we would just trade without money.
We would trade without money, right?
So
But what's the problem with trading without money?
Well, sometimes you're not sure how things value to the other thing.
Sometimes you don't know that. And what other kinds of weird things happen? See, it's easy when there's only two things in the universe.
Well, yeah.
But what happens if the company that makes panda bears, right, wants whale guts and doesn't want tigers? Then you can't make this exchange because the company that makes them isn't willing to give them for tigers, right? And so in order to facilitate that, we use money.
But we're not willing to do it for the money either.
Right. So let
it's not the same.
us say that your tiger sells for 2 yellow monies.
Uh-huh.
So if somebody wanted to buy that tiger, they would have to give you 2 pieces of yellow money.
Yes.
And let's say that if somebody wanted my panda bear, I sold it for 1 piece of pink money.
Ooh.
Right? Wow.
That means my money is less than your money.
No. That means that it costs 2 yellow monies to buy
Okay.
1 tiger, and it costs 1. It doesn't. Worth is meaningless because money has no.
It has no value.
It has no worth. It's not worthwhile. It's only used for this exchange purpose.
Its value is its ability to move merchandise without having to barter.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right? So I'm willing to sell it for 1 pink. She's willing to sell it for 2 yellows. If I had 2 yellows in my country, I could buy that tiger from her. But I don't have yellows. I get paid in pink money. So how are we going to make this work?
You have to get some yellow money.
So here's the way it works. We're going to talk about that, right? Both countries have something called a central bank. In the United States, the central bank is called the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
In England, it's called the Bank of England. Right? Ours is the weird named one. Right? In Europe, it's called the European Central Bank. Wow. Ours is weird. It's called the Federal Reserve. It's the only one that has a weird name. All the rest of them have.
They're weird, all weird.
What do you mean? If it said the United States Central Bank, you'd know what it was. Right? I have to actually explain to you that the Federal Reserve is the United States Central Bank. But when I say the Central Bank of Europe, you know that it's the Central Bank of Europe. Its name and its title are self-explanatory. So we're weird. So we call it the Federal Reserve. It's a beautiful thing. And what the Federal Reserve will do is it will allow us, right? So for example, you want to buy this.
Yes.
Okay. If I take yellows for this, because that's all she has, right? So I give you this, and you give me yellows.
Do I give you 2 or 1?
Give me 2 yellows,
Give you
just for the heck of it.
I'll give you 2.
She gives me 2 yellows, right? I've now got 2 yellows, but I can't do anything with these 2 yellows unless, of course, I want to buy something, unless I want to buy a tiger. I may want to buy a tiger, I may not want to buy a tiger, but I'm a panda maker. Other people in my country may want to buy the tiger, which is fine, right? But right now they don't. So these 2 things come to a company. and the company says, oh crap, I can't use them. So they
It's
go...
kind of like counterfeit money to them.
Absolutely. So they go to the central bank. And sitting in the central bank says, oh, I'll give you a pink for those two yellow. And so these yellows go in as reserve in the central bank, and the pink gets given to the company. Right? So technically, these yellows are now reserve currencies in the central bank of Dr. D.
Okay.
And if somebody in Dr. D's country buys the tiger, I go, well, I will give you the money that I've got to buy it with. Let's just say I give you a pink.
And I had the tiger, and you bought it from me?
I bought it from you.
Okay.
But you're a company that makes tigers. You're the one who got it. And you don't want pink money, because what do you have to pay people with?
I have to pay people with this.
So you go to the central bank of Sarah D, and the central bank of Sarah D will give you two yellows, and you deposit this pink money as a reserve in the central bank of Sarah D.
And then I get this back.
Two yellows, right? So when there's only two countries in the world, it's really easy. The reserve currencies are the currencies held in reserve by the central banks, so the central banks can clear the trading between the two countries. Now, in the central bank of the United States, or in the central bank of Dr. D, there are two yellow currencies. In the central bank of
Sarah D.
there's one pink currency.
Right.
At the end of the trading day,
This is crazy.
we just trade them back and forth. We just give them to each other, right? The central bank of Dr. D gives those two currencies, and the central bank of Sarah D gives the pink one back. And now our currency trades at 2-to-1. That's the exchange rate.
So the exchange rate changes depending on how much a country purchases of another country's product?
Absolutely. How many things pile up in the central bank? That determines what the exchange rate is.
Crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Now, easy peasy when they're just two countries. Right? But let's say that there are more than two countries. Right? If there's more than two countries, then you run into a problem. Right? Because Sarah D and I kind of know each other. We kind of trust each other. She trusts that I'm not going to do funny things with my pink currency. I trust that she's not going to do funny things with her yellow currency. So we're comfortable with this trading things back and forth. But if there are other countries out there that aren't wonderful for whatever reason, I'm not comfortable with holding their currencies in reserve.
You're not comfortable with holding their currency.
My central bank doesn't trust your central bank and isn't comfortable with.
Okay.
So now the question is, how do we do it when not all of the currencies the central banks trust enough to hold in reserve? To clear up that problem where Sarah D's company doesn't have yellow money to pay her workers because her workers have been exporting stuff to me. And now she doesn't have enough yellow money. She's got all this pink money, but nobody trusts my pink money. So how do we play that game when that problem shows up? Well, that's easy. Turns out it used to be long time ago. So when we're talking about a long time ago, we're talking about before the 1400s. It used to be we would just pile gold up in reserve in central banks, in the treasuries of the crown, in whatever you wanted to call it. We'd pile that up. And then when Sarah D got this pink money, right, it came back to my central bank and I gave her central bank gold. And when I got yellow money, I gave it back to her central bank and her central bank gave my central bank gold. So gold became quote unquote, the world reserve currency.
Okay.
Okay. And that was just because everybody trusted gold. Well, in the 1400s, it changed to, I think it was probably the Italian lira. And in the 1500s, it became either the Spanish peso or the Portuguese one, and then it became the Dutch one, and then it became the French one, and then it became the British currency until about 1920, and then it became the dollar that was used instead of gold as this reserve currency.
So they stopped using gold quite clear back in the 1400s?
Some countries still wanted gold, but most people were willing to accept one of these other currencies as a reserve currency instead of gold from about the 1400s.
But I thought we were on gold.
So our money was tied to gold. So we said our money will be worth every dollar. So we said things like $25 will be worth an ounce of gold.
Oh, so we set the price of gold.
So we set the price of gold, and it was set to the dollar, and we winked. If you want gold instead, you can have it, but we got a bunch of gold in our vault, so it doesn't really matter. You can have it, but you don't have to. And because we had all that gold sitting in our vault, so we had a gold-backed dollar, even though we didn't move gold back and forth, it was happy times. People trusted the dollar because it had a lot of gold. Because the U.S. had a lot of gold.
Okay.
That's why. Okay. And eventually it moved away from the gold standard. This happened in the 70s. We stopped using gold as the thing by which we guaranteed the dollar with, and we started guaranteeing the dollar with US government debt. And the reason that why is US government debt? Why is a US government bond?
It just sounds funny.
But why is a US government bond safe?
Because there's a constitutional thing that says that they have to pay it back.
The United States constitutionally has to make good on its debt. It's called the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. We have to make good on it. And we always do. Although every once in a while our Congress tries to play stupid games where it gets scary. And yeah, we call it the debt ceiling thing, and the Congress stomps its feet and acts like petulant little children, and they threaten the very value of the international trade system by it. And as they keep playing that game, eventually people won't trust the U.S. anymore, and the U.S. dollar will no longer be but it's all Congress. Right, that's all done by Congress, right? You can't blame that on the president or the courts. It's all Congress because they write the tax laws and they write the spending bills and they decide whether or not we can have debt or not. That's all congressional decision. So none of it has to do with anything other than the legislative branch. So that's a completely legislative issue.
And that's a completely people issue. Because
we vote for them, and we vote for them. Vote for them as idiotic as they are. They're our choice. We, the people, love our stupidness. That's okay, but it doesn't matter. So, in order for trade to take place, central banks have to be willing to exchange currencies, right? And so here's oh, by the way, it's much more complicated than that. But the easiest way to think about it is happening between central banks. There are actually marketplaces that do it much quicker than a central bank could actually close it, but that's okay. And it happens in the United States. Chicago Board of Trade regulates currency exchanges, so it does. But yes, this is the essential story. So why would you use a country's currency to clear?
You mean like the two?
Why would I choose as a central bank to take your yellow currency for any other currency? Somebody comes in.
Because you trust it.
So I trust the yellow. So I'm willing to hold a lot of it in reserve in my central bank. Okay, so
You
I
don't feel
trust
like
it.
You have to trade it back every.
I don't have to trade it back every year. I can actually take my yellows and buy Sarah D government bonds and hold them and go earn interest on them, in which case I just keep getting more and more of the Sarah D yellow money by buying Sarah D government bonds. I keep doing that. Why am I willing to do that?
Because the government bonds are a debt and you will be paid back.
Right.
And they trust the U.S. because the U.S.
Okay.
makes
So
good
that's
on
the
its debt.
that's the fundamental trust level at the base. The second thing is because everybody trusts it, right? Because everybody trusts it. The question is, if I'm going to engage in international trade, what am I going to start pricing my products in?
Dollars?
Yeah. I'm going to Sarah D yellow.
I mean,
So if I'm Saudi Arabia and I'm selling oil, what do I sell it for?
yellow.
I sell it for yellows. And if I'm South Africa and I'm selling diamonds, what do I sell it for?
Because that's representing the dollar now. Kind of. Anyways,
Yeah.
'cause that
So
might be-
Sarah D yellows are what I, and so there's two reasons why. So the second reason, besides the fact I trust it, right? So central banks trust the Sarah D yellow. The second reason I would engage in it is because my people want to buy a lot of things with Sarah D yellow.
we won this, right?
So now
Is that what we're talking
my
about?
people
Okay.
go to the central bank and they say, here's a pink, give me 2 Sarah D yellows. So now I, a person, not the central bank, have these 2 Sarah D yellows, and I can buy directly from Sarah D in Sarah D's currency.
And so when we buy things from another country online, they have it priced in dollars. Actually, you can even choose the currency. There's different currencies you can choose. And so the money that they're getting is
Theirs. Yes, that
So-
exchange takes place.
so your bank or your credit card changes it.
Walmart
for
does
you.
it.
But so your bank does it too? I mean,
Your credit card does it too, or your bank will do it, an individual, or as a general rule, the local importer does it. Whoever the company is that is actually importing the goods. Walmart's a great example. Walmart goes to the central bank and buys a lot of yellows to buy stuff, right? And I go, right? So they don't need them. I don't personally need them. I just give I just give Walmart pinks because the central bank takes the yellows and gives them to Walmart, and Walmart goes to wherever to buy whatever it wants to buy from other countries. And the reason that the yellow is popular is because the country that owns the yellow sells a lot of stuff to begin with. Its economy is huge. So the United States, the dollar and the United States produce a quarter of all of the crap made in the world total, right? That's how big we are, right? So a quarter of everything sold is made in the United States. Doesn't matter what everybody says to you, but a quarter of everything is made in the United States. So every country wants to be buying stuff from us. So that's great. If they have yellows, they can buy stuff from us directly. It's great and it's wonderful. And so the dollar is a reserve currency for that. The dollar is a reserve currency for another reason. That's because countries that are selling commodities want to sell it in yellows. And the reason they want to sell it in yellows is because everybody wants to buy stuff from the United States. So having them on hand as a reserve in their central bank is a good deal. And so everybody does that. So about 50% of the reserve currency stocks used in the world are US dollars, or Sarah D yellows in this case.
I like how I turned to the U.S.
Yes.
And you, thank you.
I'm just, yes, Sarah D yellows, right? And all the rest of the countries, no other country makes more than 6% of total reserves. Right? I know I'm going to buy stuff from China. We go, oh, China. We only have, as a reserve currency, the Chinese renminbi or yuan, if you hear it in popular parlance, but the renminbi is only about 6% of reserves held anywhere. Right? And the pound is about 5%, and the euro is probably 6%, and the Japanese yen is probably another 5 or 6%, right? And so those are the big reserve currencies. 50% US, 5% of each of these other 5 countries, so 75% of reserves are held in 6 currencies. And unless of course you've got a close neighbor like Chile and Bolivia, you're not carrying a lot, right? We happen to carry Canadian dollar. That's another one of the big reserve currencies. It's about 5%. Yeah, that was the 5th one, the Canadian dollar. But we happen to hold a lot of Mexican peso reserves. Why? Because we trade with Mexico. That's why, right? And so we hold them, but nobody else really does. Wow. So where's the dollar going? As long as we don't do anything stupid, the dollar's the reserve currency. And it's going to stay the reserve currency. Nobody wants gold. It's expensive to ship. Right? I can digitally send dollars back and forth between my central banks. Gold, I have to get people with armed guards and big ships, and I got to worry about pirates and all of that kind of crap. Gold's a pain in the butt to move back and forth. So is silver. So nobody wants to use it. There are a couple countries that are trying to get together. China. That's the big argument is China, India, Russia. China, India, Russia, Brazil. BRIC. Yeah. Those 4 or 5 countries are trying to put together their own reserve currency and, deal the US out. The problem is that the Chinese currency, its only value is the fact that its central bank tags it and keeps it pegged to Sarah D's yellow money. So, really?
So we answered the question.
We answered the question. It's going nowhere. It's going to be the reserve currency. It'll be the reserve currency until we do something really stupid, which we will do, I promise.
And a foreshadowing of something else, perhaps, that you're going to talk about next time.
Yeah. So everybody's thinking, well, maybe the next reserve currency is going to be one of these cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is the one that everybody's talking about.
What's funny is that they have to call it coin to make you think it's money.
Yeah. Its problem is it fails to be money, and then it goes downhill from there.
Yeah. So anyway, there'll be some more
on we can talk about that. We can talk about why Bitcoin isn't a reserve currency and probably won't be for the foreseeable future. And why the US dollar will stay the fundamental reserve currency of the world for the foreseeable future. The only challenge it could really see is from the euro. But the euro doesn't have a central treasury. So it doesn't have a centralized debt system, right? When we talk about what backs our currency up, why are you willing to hold it? Well, I can hold it and I can turn those dollars into US government bonds. But my euros I have to turn into German bonds and Greek bonds and Italian bonds and Lithuanian bonds or whatever, right? Whoever's in the Eurozone, because they don't have a centralized treasury. So it's really hard to use the euro the same way you use the dollar. So there we go. We did it. We thought like theorists.
We did. We thought like theorists. Thank you, Ildiko, for that and for that question. Hope that was enlightening for you. And please return and ask another question. I'm Sarah D.
I'm Dr. D.
Make it a great day.
It's a great day.
Can you